Hello, crime storians, and welcome back to another episode of A Crime Story. I'm your host, Kaylin Lois, a graduate student in international relations who lived abroad in France for 2 years. While abroad, I started hearing all of these insane crime stories that I never heard about. As a lifelong true crime addict with a fascination of how crime affects cultures and alters history, I decided to research these crimes and create a podcast to tell you about relatively unknown crime stories. Today I will be telling you about the shocking 1985 murders of Nevill and June Bamber, their daughter Sheila Bamber, and her 2 sons, Nicholas and Daniel. From the start, it looked like an open and shut case of murder-suicide, but when Nevill and June's son, Jeremey, started acting suspicious, things were not quite adding up. This is episode 24 of A Crime Story, England's White House Farm Murder. First, let us get a little rundown of the English criminal system, which the American system is modeled after. It runs on the common law system. Magistrate courts deal with the less serious criminal offenses. Youth courts are special magistrates courts, which deal with all of the most serious charges of those between 10 and 17 years old. And the Crown Court deals with the most serious offenses. For example, murder and rape, which are triable by judge and jury. Now, let's hop into the crime story because there is a lot to cover. White House Farm was originally built at the end of the 16th century near Tolleshunt-to-Arcy in Essex, England. June's parents bought White House Farm in the early 1930s, along with 6 nearby farms, and established the company Ossia Road to manage daily activities. During the summer of 1948, June's parents asked a nearby university to send students to help with that year's harvest. That's where Nevill Bamber enters our story. June and Nevill married in September 1949, and in 1951, they moved into White House Farm. The couple was well liked around Tolleshunt-to-Arcy and were very active in their church. The couple were desperate to have a child, but by 1955, their efforts weren't working. This perceived failure caused June to have a nervous breakdown and seek psychiatric attention at a mental hospital. After treatment, they contacted the Church of England's Children's Society in 1957, and a baby girl who they named Sheila was placed in their care. June again experienced mental health issues related to clinical and/or psychotic depression, and in 1958 she went to another psychiatric hospital where she received at least 6 electroshock therapies. June was said to have made a full recovery after this, and in the spring of 1961, June and Nevill adopted another baby named Jeremey. When Sheila and Jeremey were 7 years old, June and Nevill explained their adoptions to them. Jeremey and Sheila grew up a privileged life and attended local school in Tolleshunt-to-Arcy, where Sheila was pretty unpopular among classmates, but Jeremey was somewhat troubled. The decision was made to send Jeremey to boarding school where he struggled with issues of abandonment, and later he recalled having been sexually abused whilst at the school. Sheila started to attend secretarial school in London after high school, but she wanted to be a model and her parents helped pay to have her portfolio created. While living in London at the age of 17, Sheila discovered she was pregnant by then 23-year-old Colin Caffell. June was mortified, and to save the reputation of the family, June decided that Sheila would get an abortion. This caused a rift in June and Sheila's relationship, and June started referring to Sheila as the devil's child. These words were branded into Sheila's brain, and she told a friend that she was scared of her mother. In 1977, Sheila discovered she was pregnant again, and Colin wanted to get married, but June would not allow them to get married in a church. Instead, Sheila and Colin got married by a registrar, but sadly, Sheila miscarried shortly thereafter. Her career started to take off, and Sheila went on a 2-month modeling gig in Tokyo, Japan. Upon returning home, she became obsessed with having a baby and being a mother. Luck happened, and on June 27, 1979, after a difficult pregnancy, Sheila gave birth to twin boys. She named them Nicholas and Daniel. Never one to have luck last, Sheila learned that Colin had an affair while she was pregnant, and Colin even brought his girlfriend to Sheila's 21st birthday party. The couple divorced in 1982. Sheila then worked odd jobs and was aided by social workers as a preventative measure because Sheila sometimes found motherhood as overwhelming. In the meantime, Sheila's brother Jeremey went to college for agriculture, and upon his graduation, his father paid for a 6-week trip to New Zealand. Jeremey discovered his bisexuality in New Zealand, and he stole an expensive watch and smuggled back some cocaine to England upon his return. Jeremey's parents then gifted him a cottage near White House Farm where he grew cannabis. Parents also gifted him a car as well as 8% capital of the family company in Osea Road. Soon thereafter, Jeremey proposed to Suzette Ford, who was 10 years his senior, and his parents Nevill and June disapproved. This caused Jeremey to break things off with his older woman, but he remained angry at his parents and acted out. He would provoke his mother by riding circles around her on the bicycle. He even started to wear makeup and provoke fights with his parents. He even broke into the offices at Osea Road and stole money to prove to his dad and the other owners that they needed better security. In 1983, Jeremey started dating Julie Mug. In 1983, Sheila's mental health took a sharp decline as she became easily agitated, paranoid, depressed, and would bang her head against walls. Sheila started seeing a psychiatrist, Hugh Ferguson, who had previously treated June in the past and was admitted for treatment. Dr. Ferguson diagnosed Sheila with schizoaffective disorder, which he later changed to schizophrenia. Sheila had complex feelings about evil versus good, which were some of the same issues that her mother had. She started calling her sons the devil's children. Sheila also believed that she had direct communication with God and that people were out to kill her. In early 1985, Sheila readmitted herself into a psychiatric hospital, and her doctors prescribed a monthly injection of haloperidol. Sheila hated the injection because of the drug's sedative effect. On the first weekend of August 1985, Colin drove his ex-wife and then 2 6-year-old sons from London to White House Farm for a relaxing week. In the car, Sheila asked Colin to talk to her parents about her getting off for lowering the dose of the haloperidol, and his sons asked him to tell Grandma Bamber that they didn't want to say so many prayers during their stay. Colin dropped them off, and Sheila was mad because he didn't talk to June or Nevill about her medication. The housekeeper saw Sheila on August 5th and noticed nothing unusual. 2 farm workers saw her the following day playing with her children and said that she seemed happy. On August 6th, Jeremey came over to have dinner with his family. Now, we will never know what was truly said at that dinner because Jeremey is the only person alive who was at the event, but he stated that Nevill and June asked Sheila to adopt the boys or to put them in daytime foster care. Colin, the boy's father, later said that the custody agreement was working out just fine and that he had the children the majority of the time, and it would have been odd for the Bambers to adopt the boys or to put them in foster. Jeremey said this suggestion angered Sheila, and he left around 9:30 p.m. Barbara Wilson, the farm secretary, telephoned Nevill at around that time and was left with the impression that she had interrupted an argument. She said Nevill was short with her and seemed to have hung up on irritation, which was something that he had never done before. June's sister, Pamela Boutflower, phoned around 10 p.m. and she spoke to Sheila, who she noted was quiet, and then June, who seemed normal. According to court records, at 3:26 a.m. of Wednesday, August the 7th, Jeremey called the Chelmsford Police Station on the direct line number as opposed to the 999 emergency call system and said, "You've got to help me. My father has just rung me and said, please come over. Your sister has gone crazy and has got a gun." Then the line went dead. He explained that he tried to ring back his father at White House Farm, but that he couldn't get a reply. The police told Jeremey to go to the farm and wait for the police there. 3 police officers passed Jeremey's car on their way to the farm. Jeremy's cousin Ann testified that Jeremy's car was normally a very, very fast driver, so this was weird that he was driving slow. Jeremy's car arrived at the farmhouse 1 to 2 minutes after the police vehicle. Jeremey told the officers about the telephone call with his father, adding that it sounded though as someone had cut him off. When asked if it was possible that his sister was inside with a gun, he said yes. He told the police that he did not get along with her. He asked if it was likely if his sister had gone berserk with a gun, and he replied, "I don't really know. She's a nutter. She's been having treatment." When asked why his father had called him and not the police, he said that his father was not the sort of person to get organizations involved, preferring to keep things within the family. When asked why he had not dialed 999, which is like America's 911, Jeremey said he didn't think that it would make a difference to the time it would have taken for police to arrive. Jeremey told the officers that there was fire guns in the house and that Sheila knew how to use a gun, which was later disputed. At 7:30 a.m., the police decided to go into the house. In the kitchen, the police found the body of Nevill Bamber slumped forward over a overturned chair next to the hearth, so that his head was just above a coal scuttle. The police evidence showed chairs and stools upturned and broken crockery, sugar, and spots of blood on the floor. The ceiling light lampshade was also appeared to be broke. Police concluded that a violent struggle had taken place. On one of the surfaces, investigators found a telephone off the receiver and a large quantity of .22 shells beside it. Other searches of this room revealed that Nevill Bamber's blood-stained wristwatch under the rug and a piece of broken rifle butt on the floor. Upstairs, the bodies of June Bamber and Sheila laid on the floor of the main bedroom. Mrs. Bamber's heavily blood-stained body lay by the doorway, where Sheila's laid by her parents' bed. The .22 rifle with the sound moderator and telescopic sights removed laid cradled on her body, to her right hand resting upon it, and a muzzle of the weapon just below her wounded neck. Immediately to her right, resting on their upper right arm of the floor, authorities found June Bamber's Bible. Police found the bodies of Daniel and Nicholas Koffel in their beds in another bedroom. The murderer shot Nevill Bamber 8 times and also broke his nose. June Bamber was shot 7 times, Daniel 5, and Nicholas 3. At first, the medical examiner stated that the scene looked like a murder-suicide, but hedged his conclusion after processing Sheila's body and noticed that she had been shot 3 times. The pathologist could not say one way or another whether Sheila had been murdered or taken her own life. The police did not find gun residue on Sheila. She did not know how to reload a rifle, something given a number of bullets fired would have to have happened. And barefoot Sheila did not have blood on her feet. And all the blood found on Sheila appeared to have come from her. If Sheila was indeed the perpetrator of this horrific crime, it was a bloody mess, and she would have had her blood as well as others all over her. Remember that her father had a broken bone and he stood 6'4", and if struggle had have occurred, Sheila would have had some bruising, which she didn't have. The physical evidence of a murder-suicide did not add up. On August 10, 1985, members of the family who were far from convinced that Sheila had been responsible for the killings went to White House Farm with the executor of the state. During the afternoon, David Boutflower found a sound moderator together with the telescopic sights for the murder weapon at the back of the gun cupboard in the downstairs office. His father, his sister Ann Eaton, the executor, and the farm secretary all witnessed this recovery. They took the silencer to Ann Eaton's address for safekeeping, and that evening, members of the family examined it. They noticed that the gun blue on the surface had been damaged and that there appeared to be red paint or blood on it. They packaged the moderator and informed the police of the discovery. The police collected the gun 2 days later, and on August 12th noticed a gray hair about an inch long attached to it. By the time the moderator had been delivered to the lab, the hair on the silencer was lost. Now, clearly, the police did not treat this crime scene very well. They never examined the Bible found near Sheila. A journalist writes that a hacksaw blade that might have been used to gain entry into the house lay in the garden for months. Officers did not take detailed notes. Those who had dealt with Jeremey wrote down their statements weeks later. They released the bodies only days after the murders, and 3 of them were cremated. They only examined Jeremey's clothes a month later, and 10 years later, all blood samples were destroyed from the crime scene. On August 14, 1985, authorities opened an inquest into the murders, and the police gave notes on the murder-suicide theory. Jeremey's behavior became more and more concerning to the extended family, as at the wake, he joked with those present, but at the funeral, he sobbed and appeared that he couldn't walk, but then he smiled. After the funeral, Jeremey went to Amsterdam to party and to smoke cannabis. He also began selling his family's belongings and said that the extended family wouldn't get anything. Jeremey tried to sell 20 nude photographs of Sheila for £20,000 to the Sun, and went on another overseas trip with his friend Brett, this time to St. Tropez. Julie Monkford, Jeremey's then-girlfriend, started talking to her friends about Jeremey's behavior. Julie stated a year before the murder that Jeremey stated that his parents had tried to run his life and that he didn't get along with his sister. He said he did not like that his parents paid for his sister's flat in London. Jeremey also said that his father was getting old, his mother mad, Sheila was mad as well, and in respect of the way the twins have been brought up, they were emotionally disturbed and unbalanced. Jeremey also told Julie he had seen copies of his parents' wills. Julie also testified that conversations about the killings were spoken in October to December 1984. At first, he spoke of being at the house for supper and then drugging the family, and then he intended on returning to the farmhouse on foot or on bicycle and burning the house down. Jeremey then realized that this would be difficult to burn the premises down, especially since it would destroy the valuables within the property. Therefore, he decided to shoot his family, and he told her that he had discovered that the catch on the kitchen window did not work and that he could gain access into the house that way. He spoke of Sheila being a good scapegoat because of her admission into the hospital during Easter 1985, and said that afterwards he would make it seem as Sheila had done it and then killed herself. According to Pamela Boutflower, who was June's sister, Sheila had never used a gun and did not consider her to be violent. Evidence given by Ann Eaton, who was June Bamber's niece, also stated that she had never seen Sheila with a gun and that she would not know one end of a barrel of a gun to another. Ann also added that Sheila had very bad hand-eye coordination. Other witnesses called during the trial also said that they had never seen her with a gun, except for an occasion where she had been photographed carrying one as part of a modeling assignment. Colin Cahill, Sheila's ex, said that although there had been violent outbursts by Sheila during their time together, this had involved the throwing of pots and pans and the occasional striking of him. To his knowledge, she had never harmed the children or behaved violently towards anyone else. At the time, Sheila was taking medication, and this drug was used to treat agitated states, and that it has an antipsychotic and tranquilizing properties. It also has sedative side effects at the levels prescribed to her. And if the silencer was attached to the gun, there would have been no physical way for Sheila to have shot herself with the silencer on the rifle. After Julie's statements and physical evidence, police arrested Jeremey Bamber on September 8, 1985. The trial started a month later, and the prosecution case argued that Jeremey, motivated by hatred and greed, left White House Farm after dining with his family. He later returned to the farm on his mother's bicycle, borrowed a few days earlier, cycling along a route that avoided main roads, and approached the farmhouse from the back. Jeremey entered the house through the downstairs bathroom window, taking the rifle with the silencer attached, and going upstairs and staging the scene to make it appear that Sheila committed the murders. The defense argued that Sheila killed everyone and that people misinterpreted Jeremey's words about the dislike of his family. That Julie had lied about Jeremey's confession, they said, because he had betrayed her. No one witnessed Jeremey cycle to and from the farm, and he had no marks on him from the night in question to suggest that he had been in a fight. Police never found bloodstained clothing belonging to him. The judge summed up to the jury. He suggested that 3 crucial questions needed to be answered. First, he made clear that there was not any order of importance, was whether or not they believed Julie Mugford, if they were sure that she told the truth when it made that Jeremey had planned and carried out the killings. The second question was whether or not they were sure that Sheila did not kill the members of the family and then committed suicide. The third question asked whether or not the telephone call could have been made in the middle of the night from Nevill Bamber to his son. If no such call existed, that it meant for no reason existed for Jeremey to have invented it, save to cover up his responsibilities for the murder. On the 28th of October, after deliberating more than 9 hours, the jury found Jeremey Bamber guilty by a majority 10-2, the minimum required for conviction, and sentenced him to 5 life terms, with the recommendation that he serve a minimum of 25 years. Jeremey Bamber tried to appeal this conviction on numerous occasions and maintains his innocence. In 2013, Jeremey and 2 prisoners, one of them being serial killer Peter Moore, appealed that decision, and in 2013, the European Court's Grand Chamber ruled that keeping prisoners in jail with no prospect of release or review may have not been compatible with Article 3 of the European Convention of Human Rights, which prohibits inhumane or degrading treatment or punishment. In 2013, the court's Grand Chamber reviewed in their favor, holding that there must be a possibility of release and review. There is a campaign to release Jeremey from jail, making arguments about the mishandling of the case and the silencer. Jeremey Bamber is currently one of 75 prisoners in the United Kingdom serving a life sentence behind bars. He is a Category A prisoner at HM Prison Wakefield in Yorkshire, where he works as a peer partner, helping other prisoners learn to read and to write, and even winning several awards for transcribing books in the prison's Braille workshop. This completes episode 24 of A Crime Story. Do you think Jeremey Bamber is innocent, or do you think that Sheila committed the crimes? You can comment on A Crime Story Instagram at A Crime Story Pod, where I will be posting images from today's story, or you can even comment on A Crime Story Podcast on Facebook, or at A Crime Story Pod on Twitter, or even comment and see additional photos on A Crime Story Podcast on YouTube. I'm also on TikTok under the name A Crime Story Podcast. My website is acrimestorypodcast.com, where you can listen to the podcast as well as read a transcript of today's story underneath the blog tab. Thank you so much for listening. If you could please leave a review, it helps others find the show. Also, if you could tell a friend about A Crime Story, I would greatly appreciate it. I hope to see you next time on March 3rd, where I will be covering a case from Croatia. You won't want to miss it. A Crime Story is created, hosted, researched, written, and edited by me, Kaylin Lois. Sources for today's episode can be found on my website, acrimestorypodcast.com. The artwork for the show is created by Sabrina Smith. The music is by Ross Budgeon. Additional story editing is brought to you by my father, Mike. Thank you so much for listening to A Crime Story. Stay safe at home and abroad.